Okay, so today I'm in Ben's office with his right-hand man, Gary Woodgate. Recently retired from Star Sports, Gary Woodgate. So thanks very much for taking some time out from your retirement, Gary. For people that don't know you, in 2005, you made up the trio of people that went on to be Star Sports. 18 years later, in your mid-50s, would you believe it? You've retired a multi-millionaire. The game's not gone, is it?
No, I don't think it has actually. I think that with everything, when you've got a sort of backward focus on things, and you look at how things were in the past, 10 years ago everything was easier, it seems, But I think with everything in life, you have to work that little bit harder, and you have to graft the margin that narrows up. You have to really work at things a lot more smartly. And I certainly don't think the game's gone. I just think the game evolves, and I think you've got to evolve with it. And if you stand still, then you will be eaten by the game. It's voracious, but I think there's still room for people to make a good living. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's been, I would imagine, seat of your pants stuff for Star Sports. How fast has that 18 years gone?
In certain respects, it's gone extremely quickly. Yeah. I'm still sort of like settling in with me. I don't really understand what's happened, to be honest with you. It's a lot.
So the scenario you find yourself in now, it must have looked pretty unlikely when you got thrown out of sixth form, age 17.
Yeah. I think I would have laughed at you if you'd told me what I'm doing now, sitting here like this, when sat in the Marquess of Exeter public bar instead of the classroom, playing pool and drinking instead of underage drinking, instead of actually doing what I was supposed to be doing, which is studying, and then finding out that actually I've got to sit my exams, and 2 days before realising I hadn't done any work for it. So inevitably, I got kicked out, I'm afraid. But hopefully it was for the better in the end.
Well, I was going to say, considering how well you've done, I would assume it was because you were a blatant non-trier rather than being non-academic.
Yeah, totally not off. I just, I had a absolutely complete non-trier, and and rightly so. So you get what you reap. You reap what you sow. So off I went.
So when you're spending your time in pubs, is that how you sort of gravitate to the betting industry? People coming in from the bookies? Or?
Yeah, there's a little bit of pub bookie action going on, probably sneaking into the local Ladbrokes and watching Desert Orchid win its umpteenth race. And generally a sort of culture of that, that sort of era where things like that went hand in hand, yeah.
So was the getting your first job with Ladbrokes, was that because you were interested in the betting industry, or just because that's what came along?
Well, I was sort of like being a bit lazy, sat at home, and then my mother poked an advert in front of me. I think I just turned 18. She said, "Go and earn some money. I need some rent." So there was an advert in the local Evening Argus, and I applied for a cashier's position with Ladbrokes. Yes.
Now, sadly, I'm old enough to remember betting shops in those days as well. They were a lot different than they are today. There was a big community spirit. You had a lot of fun going on in there. So was it enjoyable working? As cashier would have been more than just being a cashier at the time.
Yeah, it's completely changed. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I feel sorry for people that work in the industry, young people that work now in retail, when they don't really know what it was like, because it really was community hub. It was a... I think one of my shops, they referred to one of the areas as Kids Corner, where everyone used to turn up, and it was real social, it really was.
Yeah. Now, did you have? I mean, you've done really well now, but when you were there, did you have an ambition to be Cyril Steen's right-hand man?
Absolutely not. No, I had. I just wanted to earn enough money to exist, really, and I think in the early days. I probably did all right in the early days, considering I had a 15-year career there that didn't really go very far. But I got quite into it. I thought that in those days the training at Ladbrokes was second to none. It was absolutely exceptional, and you had to really work at it. And the setting classes and the way that it was sort of like framed, that there was ambition there if you wanted to go somewhere. And I enjoyed that part. I got on quite quick, did quite well quite quickly, and I sort of gravitated towards deputy manager and manager reasonably quickly. But then after that, it just sort of petered out a little bit. I can't even put my finger on it why. I just didn't have that drive to go further to district and regional.
When we were talking about doing this interview before, you described yourself as unfocused and rudderless during that time.
Yeah, correct in hindsight. Yeah, but when you don't particularly have that much ambition, you just sort of don't realise you're drifting, but you are drifting. And in your own eyes, you're doing okay. And in my own little world, I was doing fine. I was a manager of a shop, and that's a good role to have. And I'm not underestimating that, but I think that I was lucky in a sense that timing worked for me. And I was just demotivated, and I needed something else, and luckily that happened for me.
Yeah. So the opportunity with Star Sports to get in right at the beginning came at the right time in your life after you sort of bimbled along for a few years. Then you had the opportunity to really kick on with a new project.
Yeah, I mean, it could have happened a lot earlier for me, but unfortunately Ben would only been about 18 at that point. So, no, it did come along. For me, it was an absolute godsend, and I really appreciated that change at that point.
I love this bit because most people when they start a new career they go for an interview or they hand in their CV. You became, correct me if I'm wrong, but you became aware of Ben Keefe when you realised there was a team of stickers on taking your pants down on a regular basis in the betting shop.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Brighton is well renowned as being a live money area. There's lots of tipsters and people that know the game there. So you always work to a fairly low margin in the area. But then came the occasion in, I suppose it would have been the early 2000s, when a young man appeared on the scene who was laying waste to Sussex in extraordinary fashion, betting everything from bad each ways and out-of-date coupon prices, where the coupon came out on a Sunday and the match was on a Thursday in the UEFA Cup, and by then it was complete chip paper, and he knew these things before most people with the advent of the exchanges, etc., and he just took massive advantage of that in those early days. And there was a fairly significant team going around the area, impacting margin, driving the district managers and the regional managers absolutely nuts. And we did our best to stop that flood, but it was a bit of a finger in the dike exercise, to be honest.
So back in those days, when you were the manager of the shop, would you sort of just stand, would you be a bit more tolerant of that sort of thing back in those days and let them keep sort of winning off you for a bit before it was upscaled in management to deal with them?
No, you had a strict set of rules and parameters, but they were quite sharp at getting around those. I mean, everything had referral limits, etc. Just like today. But I think that when you bet in SP, bad each ways, and you can just sneak one in, thank you very much, and out the door you go, and before you know it, you see them walking out. So it's the same. It's the same all over. But it was a game of cat and mouse, and you just had to try and do your best.
And when did you become aware that there was this young upstart called Ben Keefe that was behind all this?
Oh, probably when down the road he was paying the guy out 40 grand in cash for a bunch of tickets that he was cashing in at that time, and I thought, right, okay, so this is properly organised.
So when you made the decision to stop laying these people, did you have to sort of come out from behind the counter and sort of say no more lads? Was it easy to do that?
Well, this is the thing. I think, if you see someone who's professional, the last thing they want to do is cause a stink and, have attention put upon themselves and start shouting and screaming about the whole thing. So you knew they were proper when you'd say, not for me, thank you. And they go, thank you very much, and walk out the door and go down the local coral around the corner. So it was patently obvious that you'd stopped it at source because they were very polite,
Did it not cross your mind to maybe let them get away with a bit and then nip around to William Hills and have your own?
Oh, no, I was far too stupid for that. I couldn't. And obviously, by the time I got round there, probably the game was up anyway.
How back in those days? I mean, how common? You say that Brighton was a hotbed, but how common would a winning punter be regular in your shop, and how common were these sticking on sort of gangs? Was Ben just one of many? He
was one of a few, but he was just much bigger. He just had scale. He was really coming at you. It was as I obviously found later in life, typical Ben Keith, like tidal wave approach to things. So it was batten down the hatches time. But there was some shrewds around, but I think we bet to much bigger margins then. The early prices were a list on the wall, not everything to everybody. You needed to have 5 homes in an ACCA or three draws or away. So it was much more in favour of the bookmaker in those days, to basically keep hold of that margin. You had to be a lot sharper,
So when did you actually meet Ben for the first time? What sort of circumstance was it?
Well, I'd been knocking back Chris Ward, his partner, for quite a long time, and then I knew another guy that worked for him who spoke to me via another manager who basically took Ben's shops on as the first one in, and I was the second one in the door. First time I met him was in the local restaurant called the Barley Brasserie, and unusual that to see Ben at a dinner table, I know. But it was the first meeting was with Nick, he's then second in command, and I sort of got through that one to go on to the second meeting with just the two of us. And at that point, Ben drank. I know it might seem unusual to those who know him, but like everything, he goes at everything full on. So when the fifth bottle of wine came out, I sort of like realised that I'd probably made it through that, and I just nodded and listened a lot of the time, and hopefully gave a couple of correct answers in the right places, and then let him go into full flow. And then at that point, we parted, and he said, "Oh, I've got a long meeting with Betfair at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning," which I didn't even know happened. But so thank God I got through that, although with a significant hangover.
So apart from the drinking, what was your first impression of him? You can be honest.
Yeah, well, I think everyone has a first impression of Ben, and it wasn't much different back then. He was, just completely out there. Just a different animal entirely, and ambition then was monster. He already knew what he wanted to be, and it was just a question of how quickly he was going to get there, and in his eyes he was going to get there very quickly. So it was, I've never met anyone like this. That was my first impression.
He'd have been a young chap then, wouldn't he?
Yeah, 26, I suppose, something like that.
Yeah, what did he think of you?
Absolutely no idea. I don't know. I know what he thought of me later in life, but once I'd started working for him, which was where I had the nickname Gary Scargill for what he considered was my left-leaning roots and unionised behaviour. And the Guardian would be carried into work, which it did back then. I did have a sort of Neil Channing approach to bookmaking, and he sort of like had to try and knock that out of me, which he spent the next 16, 17 years trying to do so. And I do admit I now carry the Times around with me, so he's had some effect.